I've been cooking in this kitchen and come to think of it as my own, but the true owner is Susan Jassy of Allison's Orchard in Walpole, New Hampshire. And we are surrounded here by 80,000 apple trees. Today we're going to be doing an crustless apple pie with crumb topping. And Susan, what do you consider to be a good eating apple versus a good baking apple?
Well, I consider a good eating apple to be whatever a person likes. I happen to like the Fuji's, the Honeycrisp, the Galas, because they're crisp and they're sweet. But other people prefer the Northern Spies and the Macallans and obviously the Macintosh when it's right before it gets mushy.
And do you often use a mix of apples in your apple pies?
I do, because like the Macintosh has a magnificent flavor, but it turns to mush.
Applesauce.
Yeah, exactly. So I mix it with a hard apple, even a Granny Smith if I can't get anything else.
Susan, tell me about the kind of apples that you grow here at Allison's Orchard.
Well, we specialize in heirloom apples, very old varieties that we brought back. And we have the popular kind that people like, you know, the Ginger Golds, the Honeycrisp, the Galas, the Fuji's.
Do you still have the Baldwin ones?
We have Baldwins, we have Northern Spies, we have Roxbury Russet, lots of those which were founded in Roxbury, Massachusetts in the 1600s. I mean, they were propagated then, and they're great for making cider.
Surrounded by all these apples, of course, we have to make a wonderful apple dessert. So we're going to be making a crustless apple crumb pie.
Well, that sounds good to me because pie crusts scare me.
Pie crusts scare most people.
Exactly.
But you know, there are a lot of other advantages. We're just going to cut these in half.
Okay.
And then with a melon bowler, we're going to scoop out the core and then cut each half into eighths.
Well, I'll let you melon ball since we have one melon baller.
Yep, I'll hand that over in a second. The other advantage to not having a bottom crust is that you don't have to use any thickener. And it's not going to be too watery because of a special secret that we're going to do to these apples. Okay, cut each of these halves, and of course I like to take out the little green part too, in half and again in half. And you know, actually when you're making a crustless pie or a crumb topping, you don't need to cut the apples really thin. They can be nice and chunky, because when you're doing a pie and you have a crust on top and the apples are too chunky, as it sits down, as it deflates, you have the crust up here and you have the apples down below. So it's not a problem when you have no topping other than the crumb topping. Tell me about the way in which you grow the apples here.
We used what they call integrated pest management, integrated crop management. We used the least amount of spray possible, the safest amount of spray possible, and they have these new sprays which are absolutely safe for people. We used insects instead of spray lots of times to eat. For example, there's the apple maggot, which comes the second week in July, and it's attracted to red apples. So before the apples get red, we surround the orchard with red apple balls covered with sticky stuff, and they go for that and they get stuck and they never make it to they get killed before they make it to the apples. So.
Is that because you're on the East Coast that you can't use the totally organic, pesticide-free?
That's one of the reasons, because the apple trees are in the ground for such a long time, and we have a lot more funguses around here, fungi.
Well, the next step is to add the sugar and the cinnamon and the spices. And this is the brown sugar. Susan, you can actually stir it.
Let me mix, yes.
Yeah. And lemon juice, which is to heighten the flavor, but also to keep it from browning. Cinnamon and apple, of course, is a natural together, and just a little bit of nutmeg. And this sits for 30 minutes because it starts drawing out the juices in the apple, and that's the secret to not using any thickener. We're going to take these juices and we're going to boil them down to thicken them and then pour it back into the apples before we bake it.